Welcome in, Hokies fans, to this edition of the Tech Sideline Podcast. We record on Wednesday, February 9th, and this will be a hoops-filled episode as we look back at 3 wins for Virginia Tech men's hoops over the last couple of days, and also back-to-back wins for the women's team. On episode 223, we'll also look ahead at Virginia Tech's big games coming up, all 3 at home against Syracuse, Virginia, and North Carolina. All of that and much more coming up on episode 223 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, which starts right now. We welcome you into episode 223 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, however you are taking it in, whether that's on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. Or if you are on our YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe if you are there, and also like and drop a comment. If you are in the live stream, leave a comment or question for Will or Chris, and we'll get to those with David at the end of the show. As always, the Tech Sideline Podcast is brought to you by the Southeast Regional Training Center. A phenomenal season for the wrestling program at Virginia Tech continues to roll on. You can help bring Olympic hopeful athletes to Blacksburg. Be sure to visit southeastrtc.com to learn more and donate today. We have our all-star crew on set today. Will Stewart across the way, founder and general manager of TechSideline.com. Lead analyst and columnist for Tech Sideline, Chris Coleman, to my right. In the fourth chair today, managing editor David Cunningham. Give us some expertise on the basketball programs. Malcolm Stewart, the best podcast producer in the land behind the scenes. And I am your host, Jake Lyman. Let's get started, guys. It's been a fun week. No losses to speak of over the last week since we spoke last for this Virginia Tech team. Went over Georgia Tech and back-to-back over Pitt.
So first, a little house cleaning. So Malcolm okay, you got the camera on me and Chris. I'm Will Stewart. That's Chris Coleman. I think if you only watch us on video, you may not be sure. But part of that's our fault. I keep saying that we need to put, like when we're talking, we need to put the the things down at the bottom that say who we are.
We could have the Nick Brown graphics and just put little pieces of paper on your
So I got hi, my name is Will. I got an email from someone who was talking about Chris's behavior, and I'm like, I don't think that's Chris. I think that's me. And the other thing I wanted to throw in there is that I got someone emailed me and said, you know, you need to do a better job of letting us know when you're going to go live with the podcast. And this person's not wrong. You know, it's a moving target, and we announce it generally like an hour before it goes live. So this person's right. We're not great at that. But one way you can cure that is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And what happens is if you're subscribed to a YouTube channel and that YouTube channel goes live, you get an email that says, hey, there's a live show right now. So,
and if you have YouTube on your phone, you can click, there's a notification bell on the channel as well. You can click that and you'll get a notification on your phone.
I think you may have to do the notification thing, not just the subscribe thing. I think you're right.
So make sure, hit subscribe, and also there's a notification bell on there as well for anybody watching on YouTube. I also try and mention Will across the way, Chris to my right, but hopefully people know who Will Stewart, Chris Coleman.
So I've started to watch more and more videos on YouTube, and so I was watching. I'm interested. I'm looking at accurate TLXs, and I was watching a comparison test between that and the Genesis G70, and the guys who are really good on YouTube, they're a little bit more dynamic when they start their videos, man. They get right into it. They show the cars doing, and so I'm thinking we might revamp our intro here at the podcast.
We might have to. Well, let's jump in.
Sorry for that tangent.
No, let's jump into some hoops. Let's go game by game over the last week. We last recorded last Tuesday on February 1st, and Georgia Tech game was the next day. You have to say, at least up until that point, it felt like that was the most complete game we saw from Virginia Tech. It started to look like the team everybody expected heading into the season.
Imagine that. You play the worst teams in the league, you start looking like
and you start looking better.
Team. Some of these teams, like everybody has a player who averages in double figures and is their best player, right? Sometimes it's not clear whether that player is actually any good or they're just a guy who averages double figures because somebody has to, and they happen to be the best player on the team. I thought so when Virginia Tech was going in to play Georgia Tech, I'm like, okay, this DeVoe guy seems pretty good, but is it because he plays for Georgia Tech? Well, it turns out he's really good.
I thought Hunter Cattoor's defense on him was great, and he still dropped 30 on us.
Right, and but yet he's their only player who's any good, is what it seems like to me. That is a bad basketball team. I thought it was going to be the worst basketball team I saw Virginia Tech play all year, and then I saw them play Pitt.
Twice in 3 days.
Yeah, it's insane to me how bad ACC basketball has gotten, and because I don't know that either one of those teams would have won any games in the ACC so far, except against themselves, I guess.
Right.
Against each other, I mean. Like 5 years ago when the ACC was really good and Boston College went 0-18. I don't know if Georgia Tech would win any games against an ACC like that. But now there's several ACC teams like that, man. And so which is sad.
And watching Pittsburgh, and we'll get into the Pittsburgh stuff soon, but John Hughley, is that his name?
Yeah.
Yes.
Came in with big numbers and was just invisible.
That's what I was getting at.
In 2 games against Virginia Tech.
Yeah,
did almost nothing.
Right. Virginia Tech did a good job doubling him. And they got a good scouting report on him because every time they double him when he got the ball in the corner and he'd turn it over.
Yeah.
So they seem to have a really good scouting report on his strengths and weaknesses. So maybe he's better than I give him credit for, and Tech just had a good scouting report on him. But that's the point I was trying to get to, is like, you look at numbers and you're like, okay, are these guys good, really good, or do they just play on bad teams and somebody has to score a certain amount of points by default? To me, it looks like DeVoe actually is really good, but Pitt, man, their talent level is just. I mean, I thought Georgia Tech's shot selection was horrible. Just horrible. And the skill level of the players on their shooting, I mean, there's so many just bad shots. I mean, just they aren't even close to going in. They look like line drives, and
what a relief it is to finally play teams like that.
Yeah. I guess. I mean,
and to get some W's and feel
we
better.
needed to get some W's.
It doesn't necessarily
make the record look
I was
better.
gonna say it doesn't. Tech needed ACC wins. But it
Right,
doesn't-
right.
Doesn't necessarily help.
Doesn't
your-
help the
your
resume
net or anything.
But if you'd lost them,
It hurts you
you're
a
done.
lot.
Yeah.
see, but the net is different. It takes efficiency. So the thing that was circulating on Twitter, I believe yesterday, was UVA goes to Duke and beats Duke at Duke, and they move up like 6 or 8
they
spots in the
moved
net.
up 8 spots.
Moved up 8 spots in the net. Tech beats a horrible Pitt team at home and moves up 8 spots in the net.
Yeah.
Because Tech was very efficient offensively and defensively. And that goes into the net. It's not just the old RPI where it's
Right.
is the team you're playing any good, and is it home or on the road?
Yeah.
We hated
It's-
the
it-
RPI.
It's obvious that efficiency ratings are a strong part of the net metric.
Yeah, it's clear.
You don't know the exact formula or anything like that, but it's very, very clear.
In beating Duke, UVA went 2 of 12 from 3-point range.
And
That's not efficient.
they hit the game winner from 3, but
but
2 of 12.
within the game, how well did
Right.
they actually play?
Right,
Exactly.
and that's why you can see the net rankings take bigger jumps at this point in the season than you would in the old RPI.
Right.
But, the old RPI, it just kind of seemed like once you got to mid-January, it just didn't change much. After
were
that.
what
but,
you were.
But you can see big swings now, which is okay because, once you play your complete schedule, it's all going to come full circle anyway.
And Ken Palm was an even bigger jump. I believe the Hokies moved up 9 spots after beating Pitt on Monday night, and UVA only moved up 5 after beating Duke.
See, I would make a joke that that's because Ken is a Hokie, but then
He's a
people
Hokie.
would get mad.
Well,
Get
the
it,
thing about
you know.
UVA is they're not a very efficient basketball team. They're a little more efficient than Tech defensively. I think Tech is 110th as of yesterday in defensive efficiency ratings on Ken Palm. But UVA is like 86, which is better. UVA is normally like in the top 5 every
Right
year
up there,
in
yeah.
defensive efficiency. And offensive efficiency, UVA is only like 70th. So meanwhile, Tech is 17th. Tech
In the country.
out of 358 teams in offensive efficiency.
In offensive efficiency, Virginia Tech is 18. Defensively, 110. Virginia is 69 offensively and 88 defensively.
Right. They're
So Virginia Tech is obviously weighted a lot more heavily offensively, but UVA's defense is good, but also you have to think about the pace they play at too.
right.
Yeah,
And those are adjusted efficiency ratings, adjusted for pace. I
Well,
believe.
and they're dead last in tempo, I want
Right.
to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to point out that they're not fantastic, offensively, but they also play at one of the slowest paces in the entire country. So it really slows them down.
slows them down, but at the same time, Tech is, if UVA is last in pace in the ACC, Tech is next to last. I mean, Tech is like mini UVA from a pace standpoint. So it might not seem like Tech is very efficient offensively because they're not up there scoring 85, 90 points every game. But from a pure points per possession standpoint, they're one of the most efficient teams in the country. Actually, in conference games only, they're number 1 in the ACC.
Okay.
In offensive efficiency. Yeah.
And if you get into a game like against Pitt, and Pitt's defense is bad, and Virginia Tech can move the ball, as we know they can,
Right.
the way they move it around the perimeter and they make the extra pass. That's, I think, in the last 3 or 4 games, including down at Tallahassee before. I think you're really seeing. I'm not going to say the Virginia Tech offense is operating at peak efficiency, but there are times where you see it and you're like, "That's what I thought I was."
That's
gonna
what
see
it should
out of
look like.
That's what I thought I was going to see
All
at the
year.
beginning all year. So you wish you could go back and play the Xavier game again and the Boston College game again, but it is what it is. Something is wrong with Pitt's program. If you go back to last year, remember their 2 best players quit before the season was over. Like they quit in February. They beat Tech in Pittsburgh, and then those 2 players quit.
Yeah, Xavier
I'm like, come on, why couldn't you
Johnson.
quit a week ago, man?
Yeah.
Justin Champagny was
Yes.
there last year.
And Audice Tony
Audice Tony.
left, and he hit some clutch free throws down the stretch for Arkansas to beat number 1 Auburn last night.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
like
something's
all those
not right there.
something's definitely not right at Pitt.
Well, and you were talking about how bad the ACC has been this year, and I think that UVA win is another one of those games where it kind of shows UVA, a team that everybody has looked at and said they're not as good as they usually are. They beat Duke in Cameron. Pitt, we're talking about how bad they've been. They beat Syracuse. Syracuse beat Wake Forest, and Georgia Tech beat Florida State, who beat Duke. It's just
Applying the transitive to basketball is
it's tough.
yeah, it's tough. But like it does make you wonder, like, yeah, Duke, yes, has been far and away the best team in the ACC, but really, how good are they? I mean, this is a Virginia team that lost to Navy, that lost to
James Madison.
This is probably the least efficient team of the Tony Bennett era, outside of, I guess, his first 2 years, probably, when he was rebuilding. And they could go into Cameron and beat Duke like that. So how good is Duke?
Yeah.
I know watching the end of that game, Duke is just so tremendously athletic and physical. You know, I mean, you guys know that. You know, they are that. It's funny, and I don't want to badmouth Virginia Tech, but you watch Tech play Pitt, and I DVR'd UVA and Duke, and there wasn't a lot of atmosphere at the Tech Pitt game. The students were great, but the fans aren't really filling in the other fans, and then you go to watching UVA and Duke at Duke, a hotly contested game that came down to the last shot. That was a really fun game to watch.
Well, and there was the situation on Monday, because it was a makeup game from over winter break, student season tickets weren't honored for Monday's game for Virginia Tech. So there was probably a little less atmosphere because a lot of the students that thought they might have tickets to the game weren't able to go because they didn't.
Yeah, I saw some chatter about that.
So there were limited student tickets. So hopefully, you would think Saturday night, Syracuse, it's going to be back to
that. The Syracuse game is at 6 o'clock, right?
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think I believe, and you know, we try to avoid these kinds of discussions, but I think that the requirement for a Vax card or a negative test has put a damper on the number of people coming to games.
Well, that was just lifted this morning.
Yes, not students. So I did want to cover that breaking news. That was lifted this morning. So it'll be interesting to see how the crowd is Saturday night. It's a good time. Saturday night, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
High-profile team, regardless how good they are. Syracuse is a high-profile
if you're
program.
coming into town, you're looking to have a nice weekend in Blacksburg, you can go to the basketball game at 6 o'clock. It's still happy hour when the game's over.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and with this, with the I'll call them restrictions, with whatever you want to call them, lifted, it'll be interesting to see how the crowd is Saturday.
Well, the next three should all be good crowds. 6 o'clock Syracuse on a Saturday, Big Monday Virginia on Monday, and then the next Saturday North Carolina. That's a 4 o'clock start.
This is the stretch we were talking about before the season started. That was going to be awesome. I'm like, there's a chance to pick up some quality wins. Nope. Not one single one of those teams is a quadrant one.
Now, for it to be a Q1 win at home, the team you beat has to be top
30.
Top 30 in the
top 30.
Yes.
Yeah, and Carolina right now is about 42.
Right. So
and UVA is like 80 something.
Yeah, UVA's 80, and
Syracuse
UVA would to be quadrant 2. UVA would have to jump up to 75.
Yeah. So if, unless something crazy happens, Virginia Tech is going to go this entire season without playing a quadrant 1 game at home. Wow. That's how bad the ACC is.
That is correct.
Because, the only team in the top 30 is Duke.
And Tech only gets Duke once this year.
Yeah, and that's on the road, right. So that's bad luck from that standpoint, from a scheduling standpoint. The other things that hurt Tech was obviously, the Xavier game is Tech's own fault. Tech played a poor game that night.
Yeah.
And Dayton.
Right. But the St. Bonaventure game, St. Bonaventure won the A-10 last year.
And they were picked to win it this year.
They were picked to win it this year. They brought back all their starters. They're the 12th most experienced team in the country, and they've tanked it.
They're bad.
You set up the schedule, you play them on a neutral site, and on a neutral site, a top 50 net team is a quad 1 win. You assume if you beat them, that's going to be a quadrant 1 win. Nope, they're out of the top 100.
It's not even a quadrant 2 win.
It's not even a quadrant 2
It's a quadrant 3 win.
Quadrant 3, right. And then you go play Maryland in College Park on the road, a team that's made the NCAA tournament six out of the last 7 years, and under Mark Turgeon, and
former Maryland coach
Mark Turgeon. So you assume, okay, they're going to be top 75, and it's top 75, which is a quadrant 1 road win.
Road win, right?
You assume they're going to be top 75, considering they make the NCAA tournament pretty much every year. Nope, they fired him the next day, and Maryland is tanked. They're not in the top 100.
I was pleased with the win, but I did realize I was watching a bad Maryland
team. I didn't think they were good at the time, but at the same time, I didn't think they were going to fire their coach the next day and replace him with Danny Manning. So that's unfortunate for Virginia Tech.
Well, and Tech lost this game, but Memphis was expected to be a premier game, and they have been awful pretty much since they beat Virginia Tech.
They're outside the top 50, which means even if Tech had won that game, it wouldn't have been a quadrant 1 win.
Yeah. This is incredible.
Right. Now, the ironic part is Tech is a quadrant 1 win for Memphis.
Wow.
Because it
because
was,
Virginia Tech is
top
43.
Yeah.
So and that's one of the other things that so many of these ACC teams, we talk about Virginia Tech not having any opportunities, but because Virginia Tech, I think the only other team in the top 45 outside of North Carolina is Wake Forest. Wake Forest is somewhere in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, Virginia might not be up to 75 yet, so it wouldn't be a quadrant 2 win for Virginia Tech. But Virginia would come in here and
With a
play
chance at a quadrant 1.
with a chance at a quadrant 1
Quadrant
win.
1 win, right. So from a pure standpoint of quadrants, they have more to play for.
Yeah.
Right. So it's crazy
Very
stuff that's
interesting.
going on. And Virginia Tech, we really need to root for Florida State to get it back together and start winning games
Yep.
again. So yes, we'd be battling them for a bubble spot, but we need a quadrant 1 win. Right now, our only opportunity for a quadrant 1 win is to win at Miami. We need Florida State to get back into the top 75. I think they're 85th or 86th now, something like that. And if they get back into the top 75, then Virginia Tech will have a quadrant 1 win at Florida State.
Virginia Tech's currently 0-4 in quadrant 1, I believe.
Yes.
Right. One of those is the neutral site game against Xavier. The other 3 true road games. So
Right. Dayton.
Right. And you know,
Dayton, Duke, and Carolina.
right. So it will also be beneficial. Clemson, I don't know where they are after they lost last night, but they were 78th before last night. So if they could get in the top 75, then Tech plays them on the road later this year.
The last game of the season.
The last game of the season. If Tech could win that game, that could be another quadrant 1 win. And then you've got the ACC tournament. So these numbers are fluid to a certain extent. But the one thing I am 99.9% sure of is Virginia Tech's not going to have an opportunity to win a quadrant 1 game at home this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Clemson just dropped to 80. They were at 78. They dropped 2 spots to 80.
Okay, so hope
it shows you
Clemson
how
gets hot too.
Yeah, but
Still about a month
it shows
until
you
that
how
game.
how much this fluctuates. And I was going to bring this up. I put it at the end of Chris's article yesterday, and I was going to bring this up, but I'll do it now since we're on this topic. So I researched. Chris had put in there all the teams when he wrote his article yesterday that Joe Lunardi listed on the bubble. And if I went and looked at everybody's net ratings, and I think there are about 8 to 12 teams, and there were only 4 that were higher in the net than Virginia Tech, and they were North Carolina, UAB, Washington State, and Utah State. Utah State actually lost last night. North Carolina and UAB have really difficult strength of schedules. They're higher than the Hokies at least. UAB has 2 quadrant 1 wins. North Carolina doesn't have any. I think North Carolina 0-7 in quadrant 1.
Wow.
That's right, yeah.
But I was curious about Washington State, and I looked it up, and this just shows you how good the Pac-12 is. You know, and obviously not every schedule's like this, but in the next 5 games, starting on Thursday, Washington State plays Oregon, Arizona, UCLA, and USC, and all 4 of those are quadrant 1 games.
Right.
They play 4 quadrant 1 games in 5 games.
5 games.
Virginia Tech has
Played
has
4 all season.
played 2 in the ACC all year.
Right. Right. So the season's been going on for what now? 3 months, and we've played a total of 4 quadrant 1 teams. And like I was saying, it's this upcoming week that we thought before the season began. Okay, we didn't really think Syracuse would be a quadrant 1 at home, but it's still Syracuse, so it's a big game. We didn't think they'd be 13-11 or whatever they are. But then you've got Virginia, and then you've got North Carolina. Surely both of those teams are going to be top 30.
Yeah.
Nope.
No.
And unless Carolina goes on an insane run, they're not going to be top 30.
No.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
So-
and it's also crazy to think about the non-conference schedule too, which is a non-conference schedule we talked about at the beginning of the season was probably the most difficult non-conference schedule Virginia Tech's ever played in the ACC, and
Only
you get
2 of them were
you get 2
quadrant 1.
non-conference chances out of it, or
Right.
quadrant 1 chances out of it.
I wrote before the season that I thought Virginia Tech was going to have 2 or 3 quadrant 1 wins before the ACC slate started. And as it turned out, they only had an opportunity for 2. And they're not just an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So, and one of those was the true road game against Dayton, and that's a tough place to win.
Yes.
So, you really look back, you look back at key moments in the season. There's still key moments to come, I suppose. But as of right now, with Virginia Tech being on the wrong side of the bubble, that Xavier game is the one that you look at.
Yeah.
Well,
So I want to throw this out there before we move on. I don't want this to go unnoticed. North Carolina 0-7 in Q1. But if it comes down to bubble team decisions and North Carolina and Virginia Tech are both on the bubble, I think we know what's going to happen.
Well,
and they also have, as I said, they also have a more difficult strength.
Yes,
schedule.
their strength of schedule has been tougher overall. Yeah, and they're going to play Duke twice. I want to say that they're like 50 spots ahead of Tech in strength of schedule overall.
So that'll play in.
Right, and that's an issue these days. I mean, you can help your non-conference schedule to a certain extent, and Mike Young, to his credit, put what we thought was going to be a really good non-conference schedule out there. It didn't turn out to be as good as people thought. But the ACC's down this year. And, with the scheduling model the way it is, with so many teams, 20 games, some teams are playing some teams once, some teams are playing some teams twice. We get Duke on the road and not at home. That doesn't matter so much in a year where the ACC is really good, and pretty much no matter who you're playing, you're going to play a good opponent every week. But in a year like this, when there are just so few good teams in the ACC, if you draw the short end of the stick on a schedule standpoint, your opportunities are going to be extremely limited. So I think Jim Phillips has had some conversations with athletic directors around the ACC, and he's told them, you want to get a better TV contract? Well, I can't renegotiate it right now because I have nothing to sell. I have absolutely nothing.
No
Right. So y'all, Miami, you have to get better at football. Virginia Tech, you have to get better at football. Clemson, no more 9-3 records. Even though 9-3 is good for most of us, it's not good for Clemson.
I'll take it.
Florida State, start going to bowls again. And it's the same thing for ACC basketball. He's got to be pressuring some of these athletic directors to get rid of some of these old coaches, man.
I was about to say, I don't really see any help on the horizon either. I think Wake is getting better.
Yes.
We're not sure what will happen to Duke under John Shire. They're recruiting well.
Right.
Carolina, I don't know. I'm paying enough attention.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's been okay with
Yeah, they've been okay, but do we expect Hubert Davis to be a Hall of Fame coach like Roy Williams?
No.
Right. And I expect Carolina will be good, but
so essentially in the conference with Kay and Roy and Leonard Hamilton and Jim Boeheim, you had three or four Hall of Fame coaches, but everybody was in their upper 70s.
They're all in their 70s.
Boeheim's 77 years old, man.
Yeah.
How do you really expect that guy to be focused on recruiting? And he's what year are his sons?
Buddy, I think is a senior.
Buddy's a senior.
Buddy is okay.
And
Jimmy's a grad transfer.
Yeah,
I think.
so they're both old, so they're almost done.
Okay, so maybe he retires after this year once they're done, or if they're the same year, I don't know. But he's kind of holding them hostage at this point, in my opinion, and that should be one of the ACC's premier programs. Larenega's still doing okay at Miami, but how long is that going to last? He's 73, and quite frankly, you worry about Miami because they're putting so much into football now, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. How much is left over for basketball?
Yeah.
I don't know. Leonard Hamilton, they're not. I know they've had some tough, unfortunate situations with their team this year, but what is he? 74, something like that.
Yeah, but he looks like he's 55.
Yeah, but he looks like he's 50. But it's look, at some point when you reach a certain age, you just don't want to go out there and recruit anymore. You just want to coach, and that's what's happening to some of these ACC teams, and Jim Phillips needs to get on these athletic directors, put some pressure on them. It's like, look, we need some new blood in this league.
I can tell you, I turned 57 in December, and the slowdown is real. And these guys are 20 years older than I am in a profession that is extremely pressure-packed and competitive. You know? So we diverted the conversation. I said, I don't see much help on the horizon for the ACC.
So it's like, all right, so I saw a picture of Mike Young and Mike Jones at out recruiting yesterday.
Yeah, they were watching Rodney Rice's
game?
game?
They were at Rodney Rice's game. And, it's a good opportunity to do this because Tech has a long week. They've got the entire week off until Syracuse comes to town. But I just can't imagine Boeheim at his age doing that very much. It's like, I'll play a game, and then the next night I'm in D.C. recruiting. You're 77 years old. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of those programs are starting to slide. I mean, heading into this year, you kind of expected Duke would be good, Carolina would still be good, Virginia Tech, Florida State.
Right.
All of these teams, Syracuse.
It's almost everybody's disappointing except for Wake Forest.
Yeah,
they've overachieved. Duke is pretty much what we thought.
Yeah, I would say Miami's
a little better,
and Notre Dame's been
that's true. But even then, like their net rankings is like 60s and 70s, and So
good records, but they're not necessarily analytically good.
Exactly. And again, smoked in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, smoked in the unofficial Atlantic 10
Now, wait a minute.
ACC
We weren't
Challenge.
smoked in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. The first day was
The first
hideous.
night was,
Oh,
yes.
right.
But the second night, it came down to the last game.
Oh, did it really?
It
end up
did.
being
I think it ended up
8-6 or
8-6.
something.
It was
So lost again though.
yes, for the
And
zillionth
I
year in a
will.
row.
We got smoked in the unofficial ACC Atlantic 10 Challenge.
Yes.
so,
Well, it was two wins total.
So Jim Phillips. I mean, I don't know. Everybody wants a renegotiated deal with ESPN thanks to that 30-year albatross that John Swafford stamped us with. But honestly, if Jim Phillips walked into ESPN tomorrow and they sat down at a table and started renegotiating, what ammo does he have?
It would
It's
not
a
go
bad
well.
football conference and a bad basketball conference. How are you supposed to squeeze any more money out of? I mean, it's a results-driven business, right? So it's not a good time to renegotiate the TV contract. It's a good time to fire a bunch of football coaches and hope everybody gets better, which is what happened in this offseason. Now we'll see if everybody gets better. And now after this offseason, it's a good time to have some changes on the basketball side of things too. So hopefully in 2 or 3 years, the product in both sports is better and we could discuss a possible renegotiation. But right now, ESPN would just laugh in his face.
Yeah, not a good year for the ACC, at least in major sports. Obviously, still dominating in other ones like soccer and stuff like that. But yeah,
And women's basketball.
And
Very
women's
good in women's
basketball.
but
we're going to talk about women's basketball in the second half. Let's take a break here, David. You got anything in the fourth chair before we head to break?
Somebody asked a blatant question. It was Alex Burnell asked a point-blank question, which I'm sure has been running through everybody's minds. Do you guys think Virginia Tech's going to make the NCAA tournament?
I would say the chances are slim. They have to win a bunch of games and win a lot of them like they did against Pitt.
Is there a number of games you would put your
I
finger on?
don't think so because it depends on
If
what
there are 10
everybody.
games left, you probably got to go 8-2 at least.
How many games are there?
There's
Seven regular
Seven left.
season plus the ACC.
4 at
tournament.
home, 3 away.
Right. So some of it depends on all right, what if Tech ends up winning 20 or even 19, and then Florida State and Clemson do end up in that top 75. Tech wins the Clemson game, then you've got 2 quadrant one wins, and your chances are a lot better. What if Tech wins 19 or 20, but those teams don't finish in the top 75 top 75? So Tech wins 20 games, but they have 0 quadrant one wins.
Man, I'd put the chances at literally 10 to 20%.
I don't think they're great. I do think that, I'm hoping to get into the play-in round. That's what I'm hoping for right now.
11 seed.
Well, right. And the thing is, outside of Duke, nobody in this league is going to be seeded very well. What is the second best team projected as an 8th seed right now?
Wake Forest, eight seed by Joe Lunardi.
That's the second best team in the ACC. Carolina's projected as a 12 seed.
Yeah.
They're barely hanging on.
There are only 2 teams that Joe Lunardi doesn't have on the bubble that are in the tournament. That's Duke and Wake Forest.
If Carolina had lost last night, which they almost did, I would have knocked them off the bubble probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe put Clemson a little bit in, but not by much.
Right.
So before we go, are you setting up for intermission? Is that where you were headed?
Yeah, I think we're going to take a break.
I think we spent a crap ton of time talking about ACC basketball. We didn't spend much time talking about Virginia
We're going to
Tech
spend the
basketball,
second half exclusively on Virginia Tech basketball as well.
including men's basketball.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. That was
just checking because we got to talk some people up, man.
No, we're going to talk
Yeah.
in the second half, both Pitt games completely. We'll talk a little women's basketball at the end, but mostly men's basketball in the second half.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would think Hokies probably have to maybe win 2 games in the ACC tournament. That would probably be...
Depending on who they play, depending on what other teams do. I mean, we try to do this exercise every year. We need to do this. We need to do that. And then
Comes down
what
to just
do the
winning
other bubble
games,
teams
yeah.
do?
They go off and do their own thing. Yeah.
All right, well, we will take a break here on episode 223 of the Tech Sideline podcast. As I just said, we're going to talk a lot about the 2 Pitt wins for Virginia Tech on the other side, talk about the hot start in game 1 and the not-so-hot second half, and also the blowout win on Monday. Stay with us on episode 223 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to episode 223 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We spent the first half of the show talking a lot about ACC basketball and how they've underperformed this season.
Sorry.
Got a little bit on a tangent, but we're going to talk a lot about Virginia Tech hoops in the second half. Make sure if you are on our YouTube page, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. And if you're in the live chat, drop a question in the chat for Will and Chris. We'll get to those in just a few minutes here on the Tech Sideline podcast. Again, Tech Sideline podcast brought to you by the Southeast Regional Training Center. We promise we're going to talk Tech hoops here. We talked a little bit about Georgia Tech. Not a ton to talk about in that game, but let's talk about that Saturday Pittsburgh game.
So let me go first. I want to talk about both Pitt games.
Yep.
I love those of you that have read my writings and listened to me talk. You know that I love statistical anomalies. And what happened in that road game against Pitt was a statistical anomaly. All right, you remember when Dorian Finney-Smith missed 25 shots in a row all by himself? If you don't remember, yes, that actually happened. And a lot of them were layups, by the way, but that's another topic.
He now plays in the NBA.
Yeah, I know.
Starts.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at what happened at the end of the first half, Virginia Tech made 13 of 14 shots. And really, the 14th one that they missed was one of those trying to beat the buzzer beater. Right.
Yeah.
So they go to halftime. Pitt comes out and takes that end of the floor and proceeds to make 12 of their first 13. These two teams combined, and I know I put this on Twitter and everybody's talked about it, but I just wanted to reemphasize it. They made 25 of 27 shots at that end of the floor in that stretch of the game. So that's the thing I thought was remarkable about that game. Now you go to the game that happened in Castle. And it was kind of a no-hitter situation where Pitt didn't have any offensive rebounds. And this went on through the first half, into the second half. And I started texting my college buddies. We got this group text that goes during games and stuff like that. And I said, Pitt doesn't have any offensive rebounds. Or should I not be talking about that? And so I DM'd Damian Salas, and I said, when is the last time a Tech opponent didn't have any offensive rebounds? And a minute or two later, he got back to me and he said, words to the effect of, I can go back to 2009 and it hasn't happened.
Wow.
This is like 500 basketball games, I think, if you do the numbers. And so that's the setup. And with 18 seconds left to go, Pitt's at the free throw line and they still have no offensive rebounds. Whoever was shooting the free throw missed it. And Lynn Kidd, who hardly ever plays for Tech, he's a transfer from Clemson, goes up all by himself, unmolested, to get the rebound, and he drops it, and it hits his knee and goes out of bounds with 18 seconds left to go. And I thought to myself, that's a team offensive rebound. Yeah. And yep. So then Damian did a neat thing the next day. He tweeted that none of Pitt's players had an offensive rebound. And that's the first time that's happened since a 2007 ACC tournament game.
Against NC State, which
Against
we
NC
lost.
State. We lost every game to NC.
Well, yes,
the reason NC State didn't have any offensive rebounds in that game is they didn't miss any shots.
That's true. Yeah.
So those were two remarkable things that happened this week. Like the whole offensive rebound thing was so remarkable. I told my wife about it, and she doesn't know a thing about basketball. And didn't want to hear it. but I had to tell somebody.
It's one of those that you come home, you just have to talk about it, whether anybody wants to listen or not.
That's right.
I remember when I was in college, like the student tickets they gave us might have been regular tickets too, but like the number you could get free stuff from McDonald's depending on however many points Tech scored. And I think if Tech scored above 90, you got like a free double cheeseburger. So Tech's up to like 89 points in the student section, all 38 of us back then. It was chanting double cheeseburger, clap, clap, clap. And like Tech had this player named John Smith, and he got the ball underneath the basket for like, it would have been an easy dunk, and he just dribbled it off his foot out of bounds. And and Tech ended up with 89 points and cost everybody a double cheeseburger. Everybody was so mad.
Well, that first Pitt game really should have wound up on bad beats on Scott Van Pelt.
Yes.
Because Tech had one point had a 28-point lead. I don't remember what the spread was.
I want to say 11, maybe 13.
Tech had a 28-point lead, and it looked like you were good, and then they did not cover the spread.
It turned into a 3-point game late, right?
Yes.
It did. Who made the clutch shot late? Naheem Aline. Naheem Aline made one to put Tech up 10, and I was like, oh, there's the dagger. And
now, we spent so much time earlier this year talking about how poorly he was shooting.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about how well he's played recently.
Yeah.
I thought he was
Two really good games against
in
Pitt.
a row. Yeah, he's not forcing things. He's letting the game come to him, and when it comes to him, he's making his shots. I guess it's a little easier to let the game come to you when you're playing horrible teams
Who don't play defense.
But at the same time, like, he was still, even in non-conference play against some of those bad teams, he was still struggling then. So I just think he's playing much better basketball right now. Everybody's playing much better basketball right now.
And I still am. I'm blown away by the on-ball defense that Hunter Cattoor plays. And we talked about Michael DeVoe of Georgia Tech earlier.
Even in that game, there was a play late in that game where DeVoe tried to take him off the dribble.
And couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it. So he went up for a shot. Cattoor blocked the shot. I think the shot clock was winding down. And actually Tech got the rare fast break points. And Cattoor scored on the fast break. So he had a great defensive stop, got the block shot, and then scored on the other end.
Yeah, and just it was weird to say Cattoor played great defense when the guy scored 30 points, but every time it came into a one-on-one situation, DeVoe got really frustrated. He couldn't get around Cattoor.
And it was similar to what we saw in that Miami game where it was just like well-contested threes, ball goes up and somehow finds its way down in the net.
He's got kind of a weird release, but it's a quick release.
Yeah. Yeah, he was in that game. DeVoe, only player to score in double figures, but he had 30 points. And we kind of glazed over the Georgia Tech game, but kind of tying that together, you can't talk about giving props to people without giving some props to Storm Murphy. Yeah. He got a lot of heat early on in the season for not really being the player that Tech fans expect him to be, the game changer, but 18 points against Georgia Tech, including hitting 3 threes to really get the crowd going, get everybody into the game. And then he followed that up with 20 against Pitt on the road on Saturday. He's really come into his own, shooting a lot better too.
Yeah, and the good thing is, like, Padula is also, obviously, since the Florida State game, stepped his game up a little bit, and Storm has too.
Yeah.
So, like, as soon as Padula went off and everybody was like, oh, start Padula, then Storm started going off.
Funny how that works.
And that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Yep. I just think, I don't know enough about Storm and how he played at Wofford, but I put this on Twitter the other day. The numbers won't be exactly right, but the scale of them is accurate. In 23 or 24 games at Wofford last year, he took over 80 free throws. In 23 or 24 games at Tech this year, he's taken 17.
Yep.
And that tells you that what he's being asked to do and what he is doing is different. And again, without not having watched him all last year at Wofford, watching him this year at Tech, I think it's just taken him this long to adjust to whatever his role is and the level of competition that he's facing night in, night out. And
I don't know. Is the ACC really that much better than the Southern?
Athletically, yes. Athletically, yes. You are correct from a team standpoint. So I think that's part of it. And Padula, I thought against Pitt in Castle, the most recent game, Tech basically didn't score. They fell behind 5-0, I think.
Yes. 5-0.
Yeah. And then Storm got scratched and had to go out. And then the pace of the offense for Virginia Tech, that's when it took off. And they scored, I think, 17 points in a row. Now, that's not all Sean Padula, but I just think that the pace of the offense with Padula on the floor is different. You can see it.
Yep.
And I'm not a smart enough basketball guy to say it's this and that. Although, with Keve running the floor and Padula pushing it up the middle and giving him the bounce pass for the dunk, I made fun of that on Twitter because it just hasn't been happening this year for Virginia Tech. There has been no pace to bring the ball up the floor, but when Padula's on the floor, it's more likely, and it happens.
He's got an extra gear that actually, to be honest, nobody else on the entire team has.
Yeah.
Now, not quite Tyrese Radford, but kind of similar in the guy that can push the floor.
What I should add, though, is Murphy doesn't push it. Like, he didn't try to push it.
No.
It's maybe it's just a way, he's played in Mike's system for so long, and he knows Mike doesn't like to push it. But, there was an instance within the last 5 games where I just said, really? Did Storm Murphy just, run a fast break? Because it's just so rare. But you saw it against North Carolina, and you've seen it, with Padula all season that he's, he won't push it every single time because he's smart, but he, there are times he picks his moments. And to add on to the Storm point, Will, talking with him at the beginning of the season, I think he understood that. He kind of said that he understood that he was going to be more of a facilitator than a scorer. Because at Wofford, he was one of the best players on the team, and not that he isn't now, but he was one of the best scorers. Now he's got an all-conference player in Keve Aluma. He's got shooters like Hunter Cattoor and Naheem Aline that when they're on, they can't miss. And he's got a guy like Justin Mutz. So I feel like through a lot of the games early in the season, there was a lot of pressure on him, I think, internally, that he just felt like he had to get everybody else the ball. And now he's just, kind of playing a little bit more freely. But it also goes to show you that, you mentioned the bench, Sean Padula playing better, David Gasson. Gasson is playing fantastic.
Darius Maddox is getting more minutes.
John Ogiaco
he
was
missed a
good the
shot
other
in
day,
the
too.
last game, and I was shocked. Just every time he shoots, I think it's going to go in.
Yeah, I said on Twitter, I went from watching Maddox and thinking, oh, what is that flat shot? He's not going to be consistent with that, to expecting it to go in every time he shoots. It's pretty remarkable.
And we talked a lot early on in the season about how Tech didn't use the bench pretty much the first 2/3 of the season. It was the starting five. They'd take a break every once in a while. The bench wouldn't do much. I ran the numbers on this last night. Between David Gasson, Darius Maddox, and Sean Padula over the first 19 games, they combined for 11.2 points per game. In the last 5 games, so Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Pitt, 21.6 points combined between
double their scoring.
Almost double between those 3 players in the last 5 games. It feels like there's been a concerted effort from Mike Young to play a little bit deeper over this last 3 weeks.
I think so, and you also have to throw in the fact that this is especially the case in basketball. Players improve younger players can improve over the course of a season in basketball. Think back to Malcolm Delaney. Like the Malcolm Delaney of November as a freshman compared to the Malcolm Delaney of March when he went into the Dean Dome, lit them up for 20, went down to the ACC tournament, and again against North Carolina played great basketball down the stretch. Probably averaged 18 or 20 a game in the month of March. As a freshman. But at the beginning of the season, he wasn't even starting. So, players...
Who was starting? Hank Thorns?
Yeah. So, I think, who, by the way, played in the G League. Good player.
Hank Thorns did?
Absolutely,
really?
yeah. He was a good
After
player.
going to TCU.
He couldn't shoot, but he was a good basketball player. Yeah. Now, I think you've seen some guys improve. I think earlier in the season, the offense did not run as smoothly with Sean Padula in there. Now, people look at his athleticism and see, oh, he's faster and everything like that. But the offense itself was not running as well. Just like early last season, quite frankly, the offense did not run as well with what was his name? He was here for, I've already forgotten his name.
Jada.
Jada. So Jada was a better scorer than Beatty. But if you actually go back and watch those games, Tech played better with Beatty in there.
Yes. Because he didn't turn the ball
Jada
over.
was a turnover machine.
Right. And things like that. So I think sometimes you talk about Padula's pace and the offense runs faster. Well, there have been times this year where, yes, he's pushed the pace and tried to turn it into more of a full-court game, and he's made the wrong pass, and it's gotten turnover. So that's something that gets better with time.
Yeah.
And it gets better with experience. And I think he's going to definitely be a 3-year starter for Virginia Tech. He's going to score over 1,000 points in his career, and we'll be talking about him in the future as probably one of the more exciting players we've ever had. And I think you're starting to see him play. As he proves himself more, Mike Young will give him more freedom.
And I think you're seeing that
Yes,
happen.
absolutely.
Like right in front of you. And it'll continue throughout his career.
Yeah.
And next year they're going to add Rodney Rice. They're going to add MJ Collins. People they've pushed the athleticism button over and over and over this year. This is why we're not athletic enough. I wonder, and eventually I'm going to think about this and put this in a column. Maybe they got ahead of themselves last year with the year they had last year. They had a bad year in Mike Young's first year.
I would say 500 was good for what they had.
That's true.
They overachieved his first 2 years.
They kind of,
right. I thought this year should have been last year, and last year would have been this year. You know what I'm saying?
And
as far as the results. Yes. Now, if you look at every efficiency rating, though, and I put this in my article yesterday, Virginia Tech is higher in the net, Ken Pomeroy, Jeff Sagarin, and BPI. all higher.
This year's team is higher than last
this year's team is ranked higher in every single metric than last year's team. Every single overall metric. But when it comes down to it, last year Hunter Cattoor hit a 3 to force overtime against Miami, which Tech won. And
this year Miami banked in
banked in a half-court shot. Xavier made a last-second shot. And that's 2 or 3 or 4 games of what's happened in the last 2 minutes of games. That's the only difference between last year and this year as far as the win-loss record.
And we've talked about the luck metric on Ken Palm, about how Tech is close to dead last in that, at least they have been for the last couple of weeks.
Well, let's keep winning by 25. You won't have to worry about it.
You don't have to worry about it.
And so it's I feel like watching this team, and these feelings will evolve over the next 7 games, but I feel like they're figuring things out. Now, granted, the competition hasn't been as good. I know, I'm not dumb. I feel like they're figuring things out. Individual players are figuring things out. They're figuring things out as a team, and they look like they're starting to peak. We'll find out more when they play Syracuse, Virginia, and UNC in the next few games. But let's say that is happening. It's kind of a shame they might not even make the NCAA tournament and be able to take advantage of that.
If they're peaking at the right time, just run out of games to play.
Whereas last year they were not peaking at the end of the season.
Because they had 2 COVID shutdowns.
I know, exactly.
So they couldn't peak. If it was the opposite.
Last year Tech peaked in late January, early February.
And bam, got COVID, and that
was the end of that.
That was it. But Tech looking good. And speaking of which, I said at the beginning of the show that at that point, the Georgia Tech game was probably Tech's best game of the season. I think that was one-upped on Monday, a 37-point win, really efficient night. And you mentioned Panthers went up 5-0. After that, Tech outscored Pittsburgh 35-12 the rest of the first half. It was really just a dominant night.
And if what's-his-face hadn't been hitting threes, that would have been a nasty game.
He scored, I think, 12 of their first 16 points or something like that. And Tech was still up by a lot even with that.
Yeah.
And that game would have been something like 30-something to 4 at that point if he hadn't been doing that.
And Femi Odukale and Mo Gee, who you mentioned, making all those threes, they were a combined 10 of 16 from the floor, 31 of the 47 points. The rest of the team, 5 shots made for 16 points. It was really just those 2 guys who were even making it look a little bit respectable, if you can say that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying earlier. Somebody's got to score. There's a certain amount of points in games that have to be scored just because it's basketball, so somebody has to do it. Right?
Yeah.
I guess with the lone exception being that NC State game where they scored 24, nobody was going to score in that game.
Well, that part of that had to do with the way Virginia Tech was defending John Hughley. He had 5 turnovers. Again, I mean, that was, as Naheem Aline and Hunter Cattoor said after the game, that was the key, stopping him, and keeping them off the glass. I think the rebounding factor over the past couple games has been tremendous. After getting out-rebounded by Boston College, NC State, North Carolina, back in mid to late January, Virginia Tech has out-rebounded 4 of its last 5 opponents, and the one that didn't was Florida State because of their 4 7-footers.
Yeah,
right.
And
interesting.
Pitt kind of, as a program right now, is reminding me of like a mini NC State. A fan base that doesn't care as much about basketball, but fairly similar results over the last 15 years from the standpoint of, okay, you've got a coach, Jamie Dixon at Pitt, and
Herb Sindick
at NC State. Herb Sindick went to, 5 or 6 straight NCAA tournaments with a Sweet 16. I don't think he ever lost in the first round except for maybe his last year there. And they fired him because that wasn't good enough. Jamie Dixon didn't get fired, but Pitt started making Sweet 16 and Elite 8s, and all of a sudden it wasn't good enough anymore. Right? So he left. And
went to TCU.
Went to TCU, and which doesn't seem like it makes any sense, but I think he didn't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And this is
coaches get a vibe sometime that it's time to move on.
Right.
Even if they're winning.
Right.
They're like,
And this is what's happened to NC State and Pitt basketball. I don't know, Pitt didn't technically run Jamie Dixon off, but the vibes kind of did. And so, like,
but that
be careful what you wish for.
But that program's been down in the dumps since he left.
Yes.
And they'll blame it on, what they'll say is, we've been down in the dumps and getting worse ever since we entered the ACC. It's moving from the Big East to the ACC that did it.
Yeah.
Well, Tech happy they were able to play Pitt the last 2 games, 2 big wins. Now 4 straight for the Hokies. Before we move on from those 3 games, I have a little trivia for you. We've talked about how Tech's been good on the glass over the last couple of games. How many second chance points did Georgia Tech and Pitt get combined in those last 3 games?
Well, Pitt got none.
In the second game,
most
yes.
recent one.
12.
Lower.
Oh, really? I was
8.
going to guess 10.
4.
Wow.
2
Second
points
chance
for Georgia Tech, 2 points for Pittsburgh, 0 for Pittsburgh.
I wonder
in
if
the
any
last
other
3 games.
team, any other college basketball team this year, over a 3-game stretch, has only allowed 4 second chance points.
Can't be.
And being a smaller team, as the Hokies are, nobody over 6'9" that gets regular playing time. That's even more impressive.
Yeah, it really is.
And obviously, I looked back at Florida State just to see if maybe it trended back a little bit. They had 12 second chance.
Yeah,
points in
they're
that
a
game,
pretty
but
big team.
It's going to be tough to keep them off the glass.
And the impressive part is like Pitt couldn't hit the broadside of a barn the other night. They were horrible. So they had a lot of opportunities for offensive rebounds.
That's true.
And
Tech
they still
rebounded
couldn't
well.
get anybody. Right. So I'm going to change course here slightly and go from Chris Coleman analyst to Chris Coleman fan. We play Syracuse on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And I know younger Tech fans, plenty of them watching the podcast, don't realize this. And sorry, Gio, if you're watching, I'm going to talk trash on your team here. Jim Boeheim, Virginia Tech was in the Big East for 4 years. 4 years. And
1999, 2000 through 2002, 2003.
or was it 2000, 2001?
Around
Yeah,
in that
whatever.
range.
Yeah. And not in those 4 years, Syracuse did not once play a basketball game in Castle Coliseum because Jim Boeheim didn't want to. He thought Virginia Tech was beneath Syracuse and shouldn't have been in the same league. And the Big East just never said, "Okay, sorry, Syracuse, you have to play at Virginia Tech one year."
And I believe
I mean, the Big East schedules weren't set in advance; they were just set before each season.
and I believe during that time, Tech actually played a neutral site game against
We
Syracuse.
played against Syracuse one time in some 4-team
Fairfield or
tournament.
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. And so we played 2 games in the Carrier Dome one of those years, one of which was technically a non-conference game.
Right.
Right? Strange time. But at any rate, so every time Virginia Tech has played Syracuse, that's in. Now, Virginia Tech has beaten Syracuse. They've won in the Carrier Dome. They've beat them in Castle. One of my favorite moments ever as a Tech fan was the night Justin Robinson broke the career assist record, broke the single-game three-point record. That came in like a 30-point demolition of Syracuse.
Yeah.
One of my favorite nights as a Tech fan. Unfortunately, I was covered in the media and I couldn't really celebrate it. To me, this might be Jim Boeheim's last trip to Castle, a place he never wanted to come to anyway.
Do not lose.
Do not lose. In fact, not only don't lose, run them out of the building. And I'm all for backups getting minutes. If Tech is up by a lot of points at the end of the game, keep the starters in and run up the score. And I say that because emotionally, but also I'll put my analyst hat back on. Every little point from the efficiency rating standpoints matters.
It matters in the net.
Yeah.
Yes. And 3 games that I think Tech fans are really going to want to see the Hokies win. You could call them rivalry: Syracuse, UVA, North Carolina, all coming into Castle Coliseum.
And I think, I talked about how the atmosphere in Castle has not been great lately. I think the students have been good, but Tech's won 4 games in a row. That's kind of lifting the spirits, and those are 3 great games.
Well, 3 great games. Tech's playing well right now, and the restrictions got lifted.
Yes.
So it should, on paper, I see no reason, 6 o'clock on a Saturday night, nobody's got to work the next day. That shouldn't be a great crowd on Saturday
And
night.
these are games Tech has to win to keep themselves in the conversation. Do you think 2 out of 3 of those 3 games at home, Tech keeps themselves at least in the conversation on the bubble?
Carolina, they've got such a tough matchup. But although
Carolina's been bad on the road this
they've
year.
been horrible
Yes.
on the road, yes. I think Tech can win all 3 of those games.
Yeah. Tech's playing very well right
They
now.
better win all 3 of them.
if they want to make a tournament, yeah. So we were talking about how there haven't been many people in Castle lately, and I looked on StubHub earlier. You want to guess what the cheapest ticket for Saturday's game is on StubHub?
Against Syracuse?
Yeah.
60.
I'll go 30.
I don't know which direction you're going, so.
It's about 65-70.
Wow.
Sweet.
Really?
That's a good sign.
And those are like the cheapest
Right.
of the tickets.
Is it sold out on Hokie Sports?
I have not. I have no idea.
So typically, for those who don't know much about StubHub, Like I bought tickets earlier in the year for a few games at like $9 a pop.
I think you can get pit tickets on Monday for $5.
Tickets were cheap.
Yeah, so if StubHub's saying the cheapest ticket is $65, that means people are not selling their tickets.
No,
Which
It means it's a
and
very
people
low
are trying
supply.
to buy them too.
Yeah, and a high
I think it'll be one of the. I mean, like you said, all three of the things that are coming together.
It'll be the best atmosphere in Castle this year to this point.
I was about to say, yeah. And one thing before we move on, I wanted to touch on. We mentioned the bench, but just not just Gasson, not just Padula, not just Maddox, not just Ojiako, but just as a whole. 24 points, 10 rebounds, 11 assists against Pitt the other day. Padula had 7 assists. Gasson had 7 rebounds.
Career high 7 assists.
Yeah, and he didn't have any turnovers.
Right.
The bench. You can talk about the starters. You can talk about Storm, Naheem, Hunter. You can talk about all the guys, but the bench has been so crucial to this. Whether it's Gasson being more physical and grabbing more rebounds, or whether it's a guy like Maddox, who at some points earlier in the season seemed like a defensive liability. He's really improved defensively.
I think so too.
That we talked about the bench earlier in the season. Tech did not, in ACC play, Tech did not have more than 8 bench points besides one time that was at NC State. In the last 4 games, they've had at least 16, and they scored over 20 twice.
Even Ojiako came in and made a left-hander.
I think Ojiako's offense is way ahead of his defense right now.
Probably so, yeah.
You watch him on defense, and it gets cringeworthy at times, but his offenses look good.
He had 4 points in that game, actually.
His post moves, I noticed.
I think he's made big improvements there over the course of his career.
Yeah.
Just got reminded of this. I want to talk about the Hunter Cattoor graphic that was shown on Monday night on the ACC network. I was laughing out loud, and then I looked and saw your tweet about it. I thought it was so funny. For those who didn't see it, a graphic got put up, Hunter Cattoor making more of an impact in this season, and they showed his points per game and minutes per game, and there was about a half a point and a third of a minute difference between the two. And those were wrong, weren't they?
It's funny. I just pulled up Twitter, and that tweet came up right away. So last season, 33.3 minutes per game. This season, 10.4. Excuse me, and 10.4 points per game. This year, 33.6, 0.3 minutes and 10.9 points per game, half a point more. And of course, the punchline, I know you're headed in this direction, the stats for last year were wrong.
Well, the headline for the graphic is something about
counting more on Cattoor.
Right. And the stats they put up doesn't make it look like they are counting more on him. But the actual stats.
Yeah, last year he played 24.7 minutes per game and scored something like 8.5 per game.
So if they had the actual stats
the correct stats,
it would have made sense.
Yes.
Go ACC.
Hashtag go ACC.
At least they didn't put up a Virginia
logo with it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, big week coming up for the men's team. 3 games inside Castle Coliseum. Hokies trying to extend that winning streak. But also a big week in Castle Coliseum for the women's team. Want to talk about women's hoops for a little bit here. They are now 9-3 in the ACC, tied for 3rd in the conference. Back-to-back wins over Boston College and Clemson in the last 3 nights. And now they've got 2 ranked opponents coming into Castle Coliseum over the next 4 days. So
Georgia Tech,
number
11 on Thursday night,
8 p.m. And then North Carolina, Sunday matinee, 1 p.m., number 23 North Carolina. And that's a team that blew out the Hokies earlier this season. So Kenny Brooks will be looking for some revenge.
So I have not really had a chance to watch the games recently. And actually, so if we're going to talk women's basketball, I think we need to switch David.
Oh, there's a camera on David.
Yeah,
Let's not interrupt.
He's got a mic. So I know Kitley got hurt against UVA.
Yes.
Barely played the next game, played a lot the next game and scored a lot, but against Clemson last night,
she only scored 2 points.
30 minutes, but only took 2 shots. So you guys who are actually watching the games, what's going on there?
Well, Boston College, she had an unbelievable game. She scored 27 and had 15 rebounds in that game. But then, again, comes back against Clemson, 0 for 2 and 2 points on the day.
Yeah, and I think it was more of what Clemson was trying to take away.
They were very much knocking her around.
Clemson picked its poison. Clemson basically said,
we're not going to let Kitley beat us.
Yeah, the inside, Elizabeth Kitley has been a lot better. AJ Shepard had probably her best game, one of her best games of the season, and she's been in more of a slump as of late. And Clemson basically said, all right, we'll let you have those shots, and Virginia Tech ended up making them, but they said, we want to, make sure Kitley doesn't get anything going, and to their point, they did. They did a really good job on Kitley. The only problem was Azana Baines and Aisha Shepard combined for 43 points to outscore Clemson's 42 points. So,
and Azana Baines down low, it seems like they just pulled her defender over to Kitley because Baines shot 10 of 11 from the floor.
Yes. Yeah, and she's incredible because she's not the number one option. She's not even the number two, and probably not the number three option. She's kind of like the Kenny Brooks likes to call her the enforcer. She's very much a scrappy player who's going to fight for the rebounds and get the second chance points. But they kind of just sagged off of her a little bit, and she just made them pay.
Yeah, she's usually, I would say, the fifth offensive option, at least when the starters. So
she went on James Karnick on them,
pretty much. That was a career high for her.
Well, that's what happens when you have multiple good players.
Yeah. And let's see. So it is your watching the games. Kitley's healthy.
Yes. She looks healthy.
Kitley's healthy, and Kitley played 30-something minutes yesterday.
She played 30. I looked it up.
Yeah. So Kitley's healthy. They just took her out of the game. I mean, she had a really good game against Boston College on Sunday.
Tech still won the game easily.
Yeah, yes. Tech won the game by 31.
Yeah, right, 31. So your best player can score 2 points and you still win by 31. It means you have a lot of good players.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of close at halftime. Tech outscored Clemson 44 to 17 in the second half.
I was in the gym the other day and I saw on the bottom line, I think it was maybe North Carolina versus Miami in women's hoops, and Miami got outscored 28-2 in the first quarter.
It's remarkable when you start dividing the games up into quarters. It's remarkable what you start noticing statistically.
Right.
Basketball is a game of runs. We all know that. And when you parse it, instead of 20 minutes, you parse it into 10-minute increments, you get stuff like
some
that.
Weird.
You see stuff like that in the NBA where a team could be down 12 or 15 at the end of the first quarter and they end up winning the game.
Yeah.
And Georgia Tech coming up. I do want to mention Georgia Tech, I believe, just got blown out by NC State earlier this week on Monday. It just shows you how far above those top two teams in the ACC, NC State and Louisville, are above everybody else. And Tech has 2 road trips to face those teams coming up. Or no, NC State's
at home. Yeah, when I was gonna say Tech played NC State close, and Tech did not even play that
Tech
well.
Shot poorly.
And this is something I was talking with Will and Chris about the other day. This Virginia Tech team is so talented. Like, it's such a team full of good players that they're going to, even if they're not playing well, the Hokies are going to, probably win a lot of games even when they're not playing well. They didn't play well against UVA. They didn't play well or the time UVA was in Castle. They didn't play well against Pitt. They did play well yesterday against Clemson. I thought this was one of their better performances of the season, but it shows you that even, they're good enough to, even when they're not playing well, like, they're still, top 4 or 5 team in the conference. So if they're, all firing on all cylinders against a team like NC State, and they get North Carolina again, those are 2 teams that they lost to earlier in the season, 2 of their 3 ACC losses. I mean, this is a stretch upcoming here where Virginia Tech, sitting right outside of the top 16, which is what you need to host in women's basketball pretty much in the NCAA tournament. Tech is kind of right there. I would say right now, I don't know what Charlie Cream, the ESPN guy, has them in bracketology, but they could be a really high seed in the tournament if they keep this up.
I think I checked Sunday before the game, and they were on the 6 line. So with back-to-back wins, Charlie Cream could have them up to the 5 line after beating BC and Clemson. Not sure, but
so this is going to sound awful, but I realized while David was talking that they're good enough that they've transitioned. And I've watched them play Louisville and watched them play NC State and watched them a little bit of that North Carolina game. That I figured out quick. I didn't want to see that. But they're good enough. They've gotten to the point where I feel like if they lose, it's their fault. And that sounds bad, but typically when I see them lose, they're not hitting shots. And the nice way of saying that is I think they're capable of beating just about anybody.
Yeah.
Not somebody like Baylor, Baylor last year. But within the confines of the ACC, I think they can beat anybody.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these things where a couple of years ago, NC State, and it was NC State, Louisville, and the rest. Dana Evans for Louisville, who's graduated and she's in the WNBA now. I mean, she led that Louisville program to the highest of heights, and now Louisville's seeing a little bit of decline. They've still got Haley Van Lith, and they've got a real ton of really talented players. NC State won back in 2019. They won the ACC tournament. NC State's good, but both of those teams have some weaknesses that now the Hokies are better. They can exploit, and this is a Virginia Tech team that against North Carolina in that loss, they just got down early and couldn't fight back. Against NC State, they just didn't really play well for 3 or 4,
three quarters.
I was about to say 3/4 of the game.
Yeah.
And it's if you can just play a little bit better, string stuff a little bit together. I mean, if they're playing at the top of their game, they can pretty much beat anybody in the conference that's partially because the conference isn't as good. It's still a really good conference, but it's more so because of Virginia Tech's just a really talented team, and it goes to show you, all the really good job that Kenny Brooks has done.
And Tech I don't think they've been ranked since early on in the season, but all 3 of their ACC losses have been against ranked opponents, correct? Notre Dame was ranked, UNC, and NC State. So Tech beating the teams that they should beat, haven't had quite a letdown
And
since
all 3
Liberty.
of them have been on the road.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, so here's our chance to break through.
Yep. 2 ranked games coming up this weekend. So if you're in Blacksburg for the next 10 days and you want to watch basketball, there's no shortage of options for you. 2 home women's basketball games against ranked teams, and then Virginia Tech's men's basketball team. Monday, Saturday, Syracuse, UVA, and North Carolina. Lots of hoops coming up.
Should add wrestling's on Friday too.
Wrestling on Friday as well.
North Carolina, I think.
North Carolina.
Was it last year, David? Do you remember? Was it last year that North Carolina beat Virginia Tech?
I
in
think
wrestling?
so.
2 years ago.
2 years.
2 years ago, when Tech was like number 3 in the country,
Yes.
and North Carolina came out and stomped.
Tech did not wrestle well.
It was a
that
good
night.
crowd that night too. It was just
That was a huge.
I want to say
letdown.
David McFadden got tech falled or something like that.
So, yeah, that rings a bell.
It was a
went
weird
south
night.
early and.
So make sure to check that out too. Castle Coliseum going to be busy over the next 10 days or so, and also baseball coming up soon as well. Softball starts their season on Friday too.
At least someone's going to start playing baseball soon. Because the pros aren't going to do it. Excuse me, the minor leaguers will. They're going to be normal.
Huh.
Yeah.
Another big event coming up this weekend before we get to YouTube chat. It is Super Bowl weekend, so before we get out of here, I want to get your guys' Super Bowl picks. Rams and Bengals. Who you guys got?
I would pick if it was like the old days and there was no bye week between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl, I would pick the Bengals. But I think they'll cool down during the bye week. And quite frankly, like if the Chiefs hadn't decided to go for it from the 3-yard line right before halftime last week, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yes.
So
I have no opinion really, none. It'd probably make my wife's hair stand on end to say this because she is a lifelong Steelers fan. I'd probably like to see the Bengals win.
I think just because of the poor luck that the Lions franchise has had over the years,
Matthew
Stafford
getting
wins.
to the Super Bowl. Now.
Okay.
I'm a Ravens fan, but and I would like to see Joe Burrow win just because I'm sure you know this, Jake. Joe Burrow, if he wins a Super Bowl, he would be the first player to ever in 2 years win the Heisman, a national championship, and a Super Bowl.
Well, the first player to ever do that, and he's going to do it within 2 years. 2 years of each other. Yeah.
2 seasons. Yeah, I just I'd like to see Joe Burrow win, and I have some friends that are Bengals fans, but
I hope the Bengals win.
I think the Rams are going to win. I mean, the Rams' defense is just insane. Cincinnati's offensive line is not very good. When you've got Aaron Donald and Von Miller and Jalen Ramsey on a defense that's that good, and also it's like which quarterback you can't hate on either quarterback. Joe Burrow's awesome, and then Matthew Stafford. I mean, after everything,
kind of feel bad for him.
After everything he went through in Detroit, I think the
Poor guy had to live in Detroit for 10 years.
I think the Rams. I think Cooper Kupp's gonna have a day. I think the Rams are gonna win.
All right, so we got Rams, Bengals.
Mine's a rooting interest.
You're
not
rooting
not
for the
prediction,
Bengals,
right?
I'm going to root for the Rams. I'm still salty about the Bengals taking out my Titans.
Where did Cooper Kupp go to college?
Eastern Washington.
Okay.
As expected.
He was, I want to say, the
His stat
all-time
lines are
FCS receiving leader.
Yeah, his stat
in
lines are
everything.
insane. He would have like 250-yard games.
Yeah,
in the age of NIL, that dude be transferring out.
he would
get some bank.
have been at Alabama his senior year or something.
Rolling
like
in
that.
the
Texas A&M.
All right, well, let's check in with David. Any good questions in the YouTube chat before we get out of here?
You guys mind if I throw you a football question?
Sure, please.
It does not concern Virginia Tech. It's actually Ronnie Adams asked, do the coaching hires at Miami scare you?
Yes and no. I'm glad they're happening because for all the reasons I stated earlier, the ACC needs to get better. I think Virginia Tech benefits from a good Miami. I think this program dropped off when most of our competition dropped off. Like, we kept beating UVA and thumping our chests about it when we had no right to because they were horrible. You know, we stopped playing West Virginia. Carolina's generally always a paper tiger. Miami dropped off the face of the earth. If you look at the other side of the division, you know, Florida State has been bad for the last 6 or 7 years. Only Clemson has held this league up, and Tech never plays them. I think Virginia Tech was at their peak when, like, they had a goal, like, catch Miami, right? You played Miami every year in the Big East. That's who you knew you had to beat. And in state, you know, UVA was a top 25 program back then. So Virginia Tech had 2 teams they played every year. One, a top 10 level opponent, national championship level opponent like Miami, and then Virginia was a top 25 program back then. And Tech played them every year. And the fact that those teams were good gave Virginia Tech something to drive for. It made Virginia Tech better. This league needs to get better, and I think if the league gets better, Virginia Tech's ceiling gets higher. It means you're competing against a higher level team. You have to raise your game.
You got to play games that matter,
Right.
and I don't mean on the ACC network,
Right.
which unfortunately is probably going to be the trend in the coming years.
Yeah.
You're correct about all that. And do Miami's hires scare me? No, my attitude is bring it on. The one team you didn't mention was Pitt. I think that's actually job one for Virginia Tech is to stop getting pushed around by Pittsburgh.
Right.
Now, granted, they won a game against Pitt. It was either last year or the year before. But for the most part, Pitt has been the better, more physical team for about 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the first thing that has to stop.
Right.
And then we'll deal with the Miami problem.
And for those who don't know, Miami just hired Josh Gaddis away from Michigan, was just named Assistant Coach of the Year as their offentive
By our
coordinator.
Georgia's DB coach.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Alex
Who
Orji has been
spent
moved to
1
defense.
year there after moving from West Virginia.
Yeah.
Outstanding secondary coach. He's had a pretty short career so far, but the results have been awesome. I mean, West Virginia's defense was awesome when he was there. Obviously, Georgia is quite good. So these are big-time hires by Miami. And, you know, it was written back in – remember when the whole lead-up to Manny Diaz getting fired and nobody knew whether he was going to get fired or not, but it started coming out that Miami was going to dedicate a lot more resources to football. And apparently they were serious about it.
Well, I really hope that for the ACC, I hope that Miami's rumored on-campus stadium becomes a thing.
Right.
That would be awesome. Just a little 45,000 seat stadium there that the students can get to, and I'd love to see that.
I mean, I don't like Miami, of course, but we need Miami to be better. I mean, like I said, the next time you push up to a negotiating table with ESPN, you've got to have some cards to play. And right now, he doesn't have any.
ESPN has fallen out of love with Virginia Tech, but they haven't fallen out of love with Miami yet.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Let's get one more from the YouTube chat, David.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think I know what. Well, maybe I don't know what Chris is going to say. Eric Fisher asks if you could flip one basketball loss to a W this season.
Xavier.
Yeah, I knew that.
Just as a quad
Because
one
it could,
win.
would be
Yes.
quadrant one
Yeah.
will.
No, I'm saying that realistically, because I think
Because
that game
it was
went down
also
to the wire.
it was also on the buzzer.
Yeah,
Right,
obviously
right.
you may say Duke,
Well,
but
I would say Duke, but like Tech lost that game by double figures,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to make it realistic. And that was a one possession game against Xavier, so that's the one I would flip.
I think I'd have to go along with that one as well.
I think just thinking about the way that it ended, Tech probably should have won that game.
And Tech didn't play well against Dayton, and they played well for 75% of the game against UNC and Duke, but they did lose both by double figures. So I go with the game that they had the best chance to win, Xavier.
Xavier, yeah, that's what I would pick, and I think I mean, I've been at all three. I've been at 3 of those 4 games. I was at the Duke Carolina games and the Dayton game. And I remember just, that was one thing that Dayton did well is they pressed Tech.
Yeah, they got up like 12-0, 13-0.
Yeah, that was that game where just nobody scored.
Yeah,
for the longest time.
And they pressed and they pressed and they pressed, and Tech really struggled with that. The Xavier game was the one where Justin, Tech had 2 chances at the buzzer. I think one was a Justin Mutz tip-in, and Tech just missed it. And that's a game that, as we've talked about before, it could have gone the Hokies' way, and it was a slim margin.
So we were talking about this in the office yesterday. So let's say Justin Mutz's tip-in goes in. Then Virginia Tech is 15-9 instead of 14-10
with a quad
one win.
And let's say Miami misses the half-court three-pointer and Tech wins in overtime. You're 16-8.
The resume looks a lot better.
7-6 in the ACC, above 500 now.
Yeah.
I mean, you flip Tech and Carolina.
Yep.
Maybe because Tech has a quad 1 win. Maybe.
Yep.
I don't know, but.
A lot of what ifs, but Tech can kind of get rid of those if they can win a few more games. If you beat Miami on the road, if you can beat Clemson on the road, win a couple of these games at home.
I think Tech's motto this year for basketball, stone by stone, is very, very appropriate for this season.
One game at a time.
It's very cliche to say, take it one at a time. But, yeah, just let's go one at a time and see what happens.
Next one is Syracuse. And speaking of which, what do we got coming up on Tech Sideline? I assume a Syracuse preview coming up sometime in the next few days?
Yeah, it's going to be a busy week. I'll have a Syracuse preview. I think I'll probably preview Syracuse and UVA, which is a big Monday game next week. That's huge. And we've got obviously women's basketball content. Chris Hirons' recap of last night's win is up on the site, techsideline.com. We've got softball that starts this Friday. Big tournament. Chip Grubb season preview was up last Friday. And then baseball. We'll have some baseball coverage coming up sometime here soon. And besides that, just a lot of games. We got wrestling. Tech Talk Live will be tomorrow on Thursday. So a lot of stuff going on.
Lots of games.
Jack Brisendine's been working very hard.
I plan to write an in-state recruiting article for tomorrow also.
Nice.
I think we've pretty much finished accumulating all the data that we're going to get as far as the visits around the state.
Yeah.
So we'll transfer that into graphical format, and I'll wrap an article around it.
Now, I do not think, and I know this might make some people angry, but I'm not sure that what Tech's coaching staff is doing right now is going to bear fruit this year. I think it may be next year.
2023 probably.
Yeah, because if you look, 24/7 is just building out their in-state list. And last I looked, they had 12 prospects ranked in-state in their composite rankings. And Penn State's already got commitments from 4 of the top 10.
Yeah, those guys committed before Brent Pry even got here.
Yeah, so.
And they're all like offensive linemen.
I don't think you're going to see some big change in Virginia Tech's in-state recruiting for the 2023 class. I think you want to start paying attention to 2024 and on.
It's going to be the long game. Wait it out. It'll bear fruit eventually. I think that's going to about wrap it up. Anybody got anything else here? I think that'll do it for episode 223 of the Tech Sideline podcast. First half, we dove into ACC hoops and a lot of Virginia Tech talk on the other side. Big games coming up. Please enjoy those. That'll wrap things up. Will Stewart across the way, founder and general manager of TechSideline.com, at Will Stewart, TSL on Twitter. Be sure to give him a follow. Chris Coleman, lead analyst and columnist for Tech Sideline, at Chris Coleman, TSL on Twitter.
And like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which has gained a lot of subscribers recently.
And turn the comments. Leave comments and turn the notifications on. Hit that bell if you want to know when we're going live with the podcast. David Cunningham giving a lot of great insight in the fourth chair today at The Real D Cunna on Twitter. Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes always does a great job as the best podcast producer in the land. And I'm your host, Jake Lyman. Signing off. Enjoy the games the rest of the week, Hokies fans. We'll see you next time.